There has been reports in East Africa into Arabia. There's a 65% increase of migration through the so-called Eastern Migration Route, which is basically East Africa, Eritrea, Somalia, Ethiopia, Djibouti, going across the sea into war-torn Yemen and then into Saudi Arabia. Often Riyadh in Saudi Arabia is often the destination of migrants on this route. And it's like all the other routes, the Turkish-Greek route, the Libyan-Mediterranean Sea route, and even the South Central American route to the US-Mexico border, sees a massive amount of people trafficking, exploitation of human beings, rape, abduction, etc. And with East Africa, with the increase of poverty in East African countries, with the proliferation of destabilization, violence and conflict, this is all leading, and of course climate change as well, in terms of the massive droughts across East Africa, particularly devastatingly impacting Somalia, with many Somalis who rely on agriculture and animal husbandry arguing that climate change is just not delivering water, and if there's no water, the animals die. If the animals die, then the humans die, because the humans are reliant for their babies from the animal milk and meat, and general relative wealth in the possession of the family. That's all disappearing. Very much so across the world, if villages run out of water, that creates massive migration into the cities and migrant routes across borders as well. And this is what we're seeing in East Africa. Many people end up dead on these migrant routes, from starvation, from attack, from rape and killings, etc. And what's developing here, interestingly, where historically up to recently it's been mostly single men or lone young men traversing on these horrific migrant routes, now you're seeing lone children and young women also. We've watched a documentary recently about the Eastern Migration Route, and you see these men going through the desert in Ethiopia to the sea and just coming across dead bodies of young women. It's very sad. And the other sad aspect and real tragic aspect to all of this is that this human migration today, because of climate change and often because of Western policies of destabilization, poverty and conflict, is not seeing any global leadership of any type of semblance at all. There's a few Western-based liberal NGOs and liberal culture that speaks to this issue, but beyond that there is no radical grassroots leadership. Rather, the right wing and the far right are constantly successfully instrumentalizing this in their sordid agenda. Connected to this, also, the United Nations chief Antonio Guterres at the recent UN Security Council meeting warns of rising sea levels across the world because of climate change, the melting of glaciers, etc., leading to the eradication of entire areas and regions of countries. Obviously, the islands in the Pacific Ocean, also Bangladesh, and in Indonesia and other places are very vulnerable and susceptible to this, and it's already impacting, as we've seen with the devastating floods, which the melting of the glaciers in the mountainous areas around South Asia are making flooding even worse, putting a third of the country underwater. And this itself will also push forward the amount of people taking these migrant routes across borders and traversing to where the historical looting by colonialism has deposited this wealth, and that's in Western capitals and places like England.